Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. We've got you covered. Traditional leagues, dynasty leagues, PPR league, IDP league, even daily fantasy football league. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, where I discuss everything there is to know about fantasy football. As always, I'm your host, Jeremiah, and we got another action-packed show for you guys today. I will be discussing the championship weekend and the performances of some of these players. I will discuss each game. I will discuss a lot of notable performances and how I think they can perform in the Super Bowl. And I will discuss, each game. I will try to break it down as best as I can. And at the end of the show, I'm actually going to discuss the future of Adrian Peterson and his fantasy outlook if he decides to go to another team, and if I do think he's still a valuable fantasy running back. But as of now, I want to discuss the NFC Championship game between the Green Bay Packers and the Atlanta Falcons. And I really thought that this game was going to be a shootout. I really thought it was going to be a really great game. I thought we were going to see the Packers high fly. I thought we were going to see a high scoring game. I thought we were going to see the Atlanta Falcons high scoring offense versus the ever so clutch Aaron Rodgers driving the Packers down the field. And let's just say one of these teams scored a lot of points and the other one didn't. And this game ended up being a blowout as the Falcons won 44-21. And this was a really disappointing game in some people's eyes because they thought they were going to get a show, and they didn't. The Falcons fans at the Georgia Dome, they were happy, but people watching on TV were not. They were not happy whatsoever. Well, the Falcons' high-power offense, they just couldn't be stopped in this entire game. Wow, you can't. I just don't know what you're going to do. How are you going to... Okay, if you take Julio Jones out of the game, right? If you take Julio Jones out of the game, then, you got to worry about Mohamed Sanu, Taylor Gabriel, because they can make plays too. And I just wanted to say, maybe the Falcons as a team have been overlooked, but in general, they have not. They have not. For fantasy purposes, they've been one of the best high-scoring offenses the entire year. Matt Ryan's been one of the top quarterbacks all year. You got Julio Jones, who's always the top receiver. And then you got, the running back duo there, and Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman, who always get yards in the ground game and the passing game. But as for the Falcons, I want to talk about Matt Ryan's performance. And he played like he was the MVP of this game. Some people thought this was the game that people were going to decide the MVP. Matt Ryan finished the game with 392 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and even added one on the ground. Yes, he scored on a 14-yard run in the first half. So he had a total of 5 touchdowns, and he had 23 rushing yards. So he had over 400 total yards with 5 total touchdowns. And I don't know if he's going to have those exact numbers in the Super Bowl, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did. And I remember on the game on Friday that I was talking about Aaron Rodgers and Matt Ryan, which one I would get. And I said I would like to take Matt Ryan, but I would love Aaron Rodgers because the game is more relied heavily on him. Well, it looks like that I made a mistake in saying that I would take Aaron Rodgers over Matt Ryan. I really thought Aaron Rodgers and this Packers offense was going to come out. I thought, with all the receivers being healthy, coming back and playing, that he was going to compete with this Atlanta Falcons offense, and, this Falcons defense just stopped Aaron Rodgers, and the Packers just couldn't get a stop on defense. So, it's not entirely Aaron Rodgers' fault, but for fantasy purposes, no, he actually didn't have a bad game. 287 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did throw 1 pick, but was also the leading rusher for the Packers with 46 yards and 4 carries. So this should tell you what kind of game it was for the Packers when Aaron Rodgers is the leading rusher. And I did say, no, you can happen to start or try to play Montgomery, but I did say that only if these receivers did not play, because remember, Jordy Nelson, Devontae Adams, and Geronimo Allison were on the injury report throughout the whole week, and I said if one of them doesn't play, if one of them does end up playing and the other 2 are out, I would say start Montgomery there, but he wasn't a non-factor in this game, and they just couldn't get anything going on the ground. But the Falcons, going into the Super Bowl, this is going to be a fun team to watch. It's going to be a fun team to watch in the Super Bowl, in the big game. And Julio Jones, he just does it again. 180 yards and 2 touchdowns on 9 receptions. And there was a couple plays where he was just left wide open. And I'm like, why are you leaving him wide open? Why are you doing it? And as for the backfield here, Devontae Freeman finished the day with 42 yards on the ground. And also had 42 yards through the air and had a receiving touchdown. Tevin Coleman had 29 rushing yards with a touchdown on the ground and finished with 35 receiving yards. So, Devontae Freeman had a good game. He had over 80 total yards and a touchdown. So that's a great performance. Tevin Coleman finished with a little bit over 50 yards, and he did finish with a touchdown. So, this offense is just, they have so many weapons. You can't stop them, man. And it makes it so easy for Matt Ryan to spread the ball out the field. And Matt Ryan, he spread the ball out. So I think like 8 different receivers. And Mohamed Sanu, who I did say could be a sleeper, he actually performed really well, 52 yards and a touchdown. I did say that Taylor Gabriel is a sleeper too, and he finished with 24 yards. But is anybody on this team kind of like a sleeper anymore? Is there any sleepers on this team anymore? Like, do people not know who is on this team? Like, can anyone in the Falcons be considered sleeper anymore? I can probably make a case for Austin Hooper, who is a tight end. He can maybe be a sleeper. Tyler Gabriel, he has kind of had a breakout games this year, but his numbers are very inconsistent, even though they have Julio Jones there. Mohamed Sanu, he is the guy that they're going to throw to when Julio Jones is not open or is being double teamed, because I really do think there's going to be times when he is double teamed in this Super Bowl. So, all I gotta say is, great performance from Matt Ryan. Great performance from Devontae Freeman. Great performance from Julio Jones. And I will talk about the team who they will play. And I will discuss the AFC Championship between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New England Patriots and some of the notable performances there when I get back to the Going to Me Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
All right, welcome back to the Going to Me Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast. And I just discussed the NFC Championship. Now it's time to discuss the AFC Championship between the New England Patriots and the Pittsburgh Steelers that happened this past Sunday. Well, I really thought this was going to be a close game as well, and this was also really disappointing, and part of a disappointing championship weekend. The New England Patriots were no match for the Steelers. The Patriots defeated the Steelers 36-17 at Foxborough, and Le'Veon Bell, who I consider the best postseason player of this year, happened to leave the game in the first quarter with an ankle injury, and he did not return. And as soon as Le'Veon Bell was out of the game, this Pittsburgh Steelers offense just looked completely lost. They look lost, and they look like a whole different team. Well, Le'Veon Bell, he finished with 20 yards on 6 carries before leaving the game, and DeAndre Williams took over, but only mustered 34 yards on 14 carries and a touchdown. So DeAndre Williams wasn't effective. Antonio Brown, who made headlines throughout the week for his social media Facebook Live video, Antonio Brown finished with 77 yards receiving. And Big Ben, his numbers do look good, but they weren't good enough to win. He had 314 yards passing, 1 touchdown, and an interception. And as for the Patriots, their numbers just blow the Steelers out of the water. The Patriots offense looked like they were just on another level. And to see the Patriots offense going against the Falcons offense in the Super Bowl, it's going to be one to watch. I think it's going to be one to watch. You got 2 high-scoring offenses. You got pretty good defenses. The Falcons, they did finish in the bottom 10, but they got better throughout the year. They got better at the end of the year. The Patriots, one of the top scoring defenses. I think they are the top scoring defense in the league. Seeing Tom Brady going against Matt Ryan is going to be something. And, Tom Brady had a great game again. He finished with 384 yards and 3 touchdowns. And he's going to his 7th Super Bowl in his career. He's playing at a high level, playing at his 7th Super Bowl at age 39. And as for the running backs, Garrett Blount was the leading rusher for the Patriots, 47 yards and 1 touchdown and 16 carries. So I do think that I did say on Friday that he's going to be involved in the game. I did say that he was going to be a sleeper. I did say that he was going to be an X factor in this game. He wasn't as big of an X factor as I thought he would be, but he was involved a lot more in this game than he has been in the past 2 or 3 games when Dion Lewis was involved in the game plan. And as for Lewis, he didn't really do a whole lot in this game. He did finish with 11 rushing yards, and he did have 8 receiving yards, so there wasn't a whole lot to get excited about there for Dion Lewis. And as for the receivers, though, and the Patriots, we got 2 good performances. First, I want to talk about Chris Hogan. What a game Chris Hogan's had. And he had the exact same stat line as Julio Jones did in this game. He finished with 180 yards, 2 touchdowns, 9 receptions. Chris Hogan and Julio Jones both had 12 targets, and that is scary. I'm not going to lie. When I saw the graphic, that kind of freaked me out a little bit. But, man, what about Chris Hogan? This is a guy that played lacrosse at Penn State and only played 1 year of football at Mammoth. This is a guy that was undrafted, but cut by 4 different teams, and he has this type of performance. I didn't even see this coming. I didn't even see Chris Hogan coming. He wasn't even on my radar at all on Friday as a sleeper, and he had the most receiving yards in Patriots franchise history. And Julian Edelman also had a great game, but of course his game was overshadowed by Chris Hogan. Julian Edelman finished with 118 yards and 1 touchdown. So another great, solid game for Julian Edelman there. And, Martellus Bennett didn't really do a whole lot, just 32 yards on 5 receptions. But the thing is about this Patriots offense is, how are you going to stop it? How do you stop this team? No, the Patriots finished with 431 yards. And I believe the Falcons finished for 493 yards. So both of these teams could have had over 500 yards of offense. And to see these 2 teams face off at the Super Bowl, I think we're going to get a very high-scoring game. I think the line is 59. I think the Patriots are favored, which I'm not surprised. They actually should be favored. But the fact that both of these teams, could score up to, could gain almost 500 yards is amazing. And both of these teams just couldn't be stopped. You're not going to stop Tom Brady. Sure, you can stop LeGarrette Blount. You can stop the running game. Tom Brady, that doesn't mean anything to him. And as for the Falcons, I kind of think Matt Ryan needs the running game more than Tom Brady, because we've seen what Tom Brady can do. See, if the running game happens to not be there for Matt Ryan, I still think he can make plays. It's just that, it's going to be a lot more difficult for Matt Ryan to overcome that than it would for Tom Brady. But don't get me wrong, I do think Matt Ryan has the capability of doing that. And when you look at, the Patriots, it seems like, there's really not a clear-cut receiver here. Every time I look at him, there's not really a clear-cut number 1 target. Julian Edelman has been maybe named the number 1 target. Gronkowski's not there, and if Gronk was there, I think this defense would be even a lot more scarier, and that's even something to be scared about. Gronk's not there, and it looked like Julian Edelman was the number 1 target throughout the whole year. Martellus Bennett has some good games. Chris Hogan is breaking out on his own. And I just don't know where the Patriots find these guys. You got Chris Hogan on your team who was cut by 4 different teams, but he somehow works for you. He somehow works for your system. How does that even happen? Garrett Blount, he had 1 good year in Tampa Bay, and yet he's been really successful with the Patriots. Garrett Blount didn't really do a whole lot with the Steelers either when he was there. But yet, when he goes back to the Patriots, he has like a career year. He scored 18 touchdowns. And Martellus Bennett has a solid year, in spite of being hurt. I just don't know where the Patriots find these guys. Just don't know. Well, on that note, I'm going to take my last break, and I'm going to discuss Adrian Peterson's fantasy value when I get back to the Going to Me Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Well, Adrian Peterson, who is looked to be a free agent this offseason, did go on ESPN last week and says he does see himself remaining with the Minnesota Vikings, but to mention the New York Giants, the Houston Texans, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as teams he might consider if he hits the free agent market this offseason. Remember, Adrian Peterson is 31 years old. He's a seven-time Pro Bowler. He was a league MVP 2012. He's been in the league for 10 years. But he's been hurt. He was hurt this entire year, and even before he was hurt, didn't even look effective. He didn't look effective at all. And he had a torn meniscus early in September, and he had surgery on it. He actually came back in 3 months, I think in the Week 16 game. Didn't even do a whole lot against the Indianapolis Colts. So the Vikings have a team option on Peterson for 2017. That includes a $11.75 million base salary and $6 million roster bonus. So they have to decide on Peterson's 2017 option by the start of the league year. And they would owe him the $6 million bonus if he was on the team by the end of the third day of the league year. So the teams that he considers, the New York Giants, Texans, and Tampa Bay, would any of these teams increase his fantasy value? And I did say that when Adrian Peterson did get hurt earlier in the year with the torn meniscus injury, I did say I think Adrian Peterson's status as a top running back in fantasy are over, and I still stand by that because we did see Adrian Peterson come back late in the year, and he wasn't even effective. Maybe it's because he came back too soon. Maybe he just doesn't have any more. But yeah, this team didn't look effective at all. And maybe that has some parts of the offensive line with all the injuries that the Vikings have endured this year. And when your quarterback doesn't really scare a whole lot of defenses out there, then, it's easier to stack up the box against Peterson. But when I look at these three teams, the Giants, the Texans, the Buccaneers, the Giants, they didn't have a whole lot of production in the running game. They did have Rashad Jennings finishing with 593 yards, but only averaged 3.3 yards a carry. Paul Perkins, who I liked at the end of the year, finished with 456 yards and mustered up 4.1 yards a carry. So, if Peterson were to go on this team, and, the Giants were a playoff team this year, I don't know if I think Peterson could be a potentially good fit, but I think they will have to have Paul Perkins as the complimentary back, and I don't know if Adrian Peterson can be a true 3-down running back. He is injured. He is older. He is coming off a major knee injury. And I actually think the team that he would actually be really good on, I think he would be good on the Houston Texans. I actually like the duo, the potential duo of Adrian Peterson and Lamar Miller. Lamar Miller was good at times. He did have 1,073 rushing yards, but he only averaged 4 point yards a carry. He did have 5 touchdowns. I do think if Adrian Peterson is added to this team, I can see him being really productive. But as far as fantasy value, he's not going to get a lot of touches for me to like him. I just don't think Adrian Peterson is a true 3-down back anymore. And I think he's more of an RB2 now. And if he goes back to the Vikings, if he stays with the Vikings, he will have a chance to have more touches. But if he goes to these 3 teams, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Bucks do have Doug Martin, but Doug Martin is suspended for the first 4 games. They do have Jaquiz Rogers who had real good games at times. They had Peyton Barber who was injured, and they do have Charles Sims who they look at as a feature there. I don't know. I think the running back position might be a little too crowded there, but if Jaquiz Rogers is not there next season, and if Charles Sims is the starting running back to begin the year, I can see Adrian Peterson going there. And I think he can help. I can honestly think Adrian Peterson can help any 3 of these teams. It's just the fact that I just don't know if he's going to get the same amount of touches as he used to get in Minnesota. And as far as his fantasy value, I just think Adrian Peterson is going to be RB2. I don't think he's going to get a lot of touches. I think in Houston, if he does go there, I think he might have a chance to become the starter there. But I just think that the fact that they brought Lamar Miller and spent money on him, I just don't know if the front office wants to do that. But, then again, this is Adrian Peterson, so I wouldn't be surprised if they happen to make Adrian Peterson the starter. And I do think Lamar Miller and Adrian Peterson can be a really good backfield duo. It can get Lamar Miller involved more in the passing game. Adrian Peterson can get all the goal line touches. I kind of like that combination. But as far as fantasy, I think you kind of have to, I think you kind of have to devalue Adrian Peterson a little bit. I just don't think he's going to be the true 3-down back anymore. And if he does, then there is a chance. But the fact that he is 31 years old and he's been coming off a knee injury, and he has proved that he can do this before. He has proved it. He has proved that he can have a great year after a knee injury. I wouldn't be surprised if he does it again. But the fact that he's even older now kind of scares me a bit. And I like to stay away from aging running backs in fantasy, and I do think you guys should do the same. Well, that concludes my show. I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in to the Going to Me Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast. You can catch the show on a variety of platforms: iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, YouTube, and on the GSMCpodcast.com website. You can also follow the show on Twitter and on Instagram at GSMC_football. And you can like the show on Facebook at the Going to Me Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast. As always, Jeremiah. I'll be back on Friday. And you guys have a great day and a pleasant tomorrow.